Grandpa listened to my story as we picked at the chili he'd been making. I explained to him what she had told me, what we discussed, and the revelation that she wanted to marry me.
Well, that's not surprising. You come by your animal magnetism naturally, he said, pretending to pop his collar.
I'm just shocked that someone like her would want someone like me, I said. Playing through what had happened again and again, I was still in a state of shock that Glimmer would choose me over someone her parents chose. If the male moon elves looked like her, they were likely handsome enough to make me question my masculinity. I was picturing these tall, muscular Greek statues, skin shimmering in the light, that moved through the woods like a pack of velociraptors. In comparison, I was likely to cut a less impressive figure.
You've got to get that out of your head, son. You're a fine man. Very few people would drop what they were doing and agree to come take care of their ailing grandfather. You're wise, too. You've taken to the magic faster than even I did, and I took to it like a duck on the water. You're brave, you're selfless, and like I said, you've definitely got your grandpa's charm. Glimmer sees it. I see it, too. It's a shame that you can't.
I thought about it as I spooned up the chili, smiling a little as I realized maybe I wasn't as hopeless as I had thought I was. What do you know about moon elves, Grandpa? Glimmer says that she has to introduce me to her camp and her clan. I don't want to make a fool out of myself, especially if these guys are going to be my in-laws. Grandpa thought about it, but ultimately shook his head.
I'll level with you, son. When we saw them at the botanical gardens, that was the most moon elves I'd ever seen. I didn't even know that was what they were until you confirmed it. I've always called them moon children, and my grandma never corrected me if she knew the difference. She never met Glimmer either, and I don't think she ever believed me when I talked about her. She might have thought I had an imaginary friend or something, or moon elves were not something she was aware of. What did Glimmer tell you about the ceremony?
Not much, I said, racking my brain. I'd be introduced to her people, we would be officially recognized as betrothed, and we would exchange tokens of affection so that people knew we were betrothed.
Have you decided what you'll give her yet?
Not yet. She said it didn't have to be anything expensive. A laurel of flowers or something simple would be just as good as a diamond ring, but I want to get her something nice regardless. I've still got to figure out what I'll take with me, too. Don't know exactly what I'll need for this thing.
Well, given what we usually see Glimmer wear, we know that clothes aren't a big issue with moon elves. I don't think I've ever seen her wear the same skin or leathers twice.
True, I said, finishing my chili and taking the bowl to the sink. I'm going to go pack some things and see if I need to make a trip to Walmart tomorrow. Grandpa nodded, and I went up to my room to try to put something together to take with me. I started out packing a suitcase, but quickly gave that up. We'd be walking through the woods, so anything with wheels was right out, and a duffel bag was impractical. I found one of the big camping backpacks I'd bought at Habitat for Humanity. I packed some nice clothes, but eventually saw the futility of it. They lived in the woods. I was going to look silly in polo shirts and slacks. I exchanged them for jeans and flannels, and that felt closer. Seemed like what I really needed was a robe, but the only one I owned was terry cloth, and that seemed like it would have the opposite effect I was going for. No one looks badass in a bathrobe, so I decided on my leather coat instead. Made me look more like Doc Holliday than Merlin, but beggars couldn't be choosers, and it was warm. I took out the sigils I would likely need, put my wards on the dresser so I knew where to find them, and looked again at the 38 in the lockbox on the top of the closet. Gramps hadn't been too happy when he remembered that I'd resorted to something so barbaric, but he had appreciated my ingenuity. I'd bought a shoulder holster for it after the business at the botanical gardens, and I slid it into the holster as I put it with the coat on my desk. Hiking boots went with that, as well as a silver dagger and a plain iron one, too. I didn't know if moon elves were fey or not, but it seemed like between iron and silver, I'd be prepared for anything that came my way. I started to pack my phone charger, but saw the futility of it almost at once. What was I going to do? Plug it into a tree? Instead, I plugged in a little black backpack I'd bought online and 4 power banks that I had in it. It served us well on hikes when we needed to recharge our stuff, and the banks usually lasted about a day if you used them sparingly. After that, I sat and thought about it and couldn't think of anything else to add to it. I put a couple of paperbacks in there just in case, a few camping elements, fire starter, handsaw, etc., etc. I finally closed the bag, not wanting to pack too heavy in case it was a long hike, and that was about the time Grandpa knocked on my door. "How's it going, kid?" "Pretty good, I guess. I think I have everything I might need. Clothes, tools, other stuff. I don't know what else to bring." "Did you figure out what you're gonna give your betrothed to seal the deal?" Clonked myself on the forehead. That's right. Let's see, I've got a couple of chains, but they really aren't fancy. I could make her something, but I'm not really sure what I would make her. It's got to be perfect, Gramps. I want to give her something that's just perfect. Grandpa smiled and brought his cupped hand out from behind his back. "Hold your hand out, boy." I did as he asked, and he opened his hand and dropped a ring into my hand. A ring I recognized. Is that... It was your grandma's. She told me that if one of the grandkids wanted to propose, and it was the right girl, that I was to offer. It isn't fancy, it isn't worth great riches, but it's important to me, and it was important to your grandmother. If you and Glimmer are serious, then I think you should have it. I was tearing up, my eyesight swimming as I looked down at the very ring he had given Grandma in front of a diner in Alaska. Gramps, I can't take this. This is your grandmother's ring, and if you give it to Glimmer, then you had better be absolutely sure that this is what you want. Are you sure, boy? I closed my hands around the ring, my eyes refusing to dry. "Yeah," I stuttered, making my voice firm before stating again. Yes, I am. I know she'll outlive me. I know she'll be young when I'm your age, but I also know that I love her, and I want to spend my entire life with her." Grandpa smiled, his roomy old eyes misting a little. "Then give it to her, and make sure she knows how much you love her every day." We hugged, me trying not to hurt Grandpa as I wrapped my arms around him before he left me to get ready. Somehow, I was asleep an hour later, my busy mind having exhausted itself. The ring was in a small leather bag in the front of my backpack, as safe as I could make it. Grandpa sat on the back porch, looking at the moon and whistling softly. It was late, and his grandson was asleep upstairs. He should be asleep too, but he had to do something first. He would kick himself if this wasn't absolutely on the level, and he still held a certain amount of trepidation towards the creatures that made the forest their home. The strange ones, the legendary ones, were sometimes dangerous, and even Glimmer wasn't immune to that. The crunch of twigs and the stir of branches would have been too slight for anyone else to hear, but Grandpa knew every sound on the property, like the wrinkles on his hand. The kid often called him a wizard, but Grandpa liked to think of himself as a druid, just as Nat had been.
"Fisher?"
She walked softly up the stairs as she came to sit with him. "Expecting someone else?" he asked, smiling at her.
It would have been silly to think that Hunter would have called me, knowing I have preparations to make.
"It's my grandson I want to talk about, Glimmer. He told me you proposed to him. Is that true?" Glimmer looked unsure of herself, finally nodding.
It is. I love him, Fisher. And I know he loves me too.
She bit her lip and looked away. "Go on, Glimmer," Grandpa said. "You've held it in all these years. Say it."
When you left me, you hurt me, Fisher. It hurt me deeply. I did not go hunting for a long time after you left. And when I did, it hurt all over again, knowing that you were somewhere I could not see you. Then, when you came back, you had someone new. I hate her for a time. I really did. I want to hurt her, to take you away from her. But I saw how happy you were with her, and I gave you your space. When you called me last year, however, it was like all the years and all the seasons were reversed. And I went without a second thought. I love you, Fisher. I will always love you. But the thought of losing Hunt, the thought of losing Marcus in the same way I lost you, tracks clouds across my heart. The thought of him leaving or bring a mate back here makes me sick inside. And I won't wonder what could have been for my whole long life. I will stand before my camp and proclaim my love for him, and there is nothing you or anyone else can do about it.
Grandpa met her eyes for a long count of 5, and when he nodded, she exhaled in relief. "That's all I needed to hear. I'm sorry, Glimmer. I didn't treat you very fairly. I didn't realize what I meant to you, and I hurt you without meaning to. For that I am sorry. What I called you here to ask is if Marcus is going to be safe amongst your kind." Glimmer bristled a little.
Moon elves do not often invite outsiders into their camps, but we would never hurt a guest, especially a betrothed of the clan.
"But will he be safe? Because as much as I love you, Glimmer, I love him exactly that much. He is my blood, my daughter's son, and if anything happens to him, I would be very angry."
Glimmer did not boast. She did not brag and say that moon elves did not care for the anger of an old man. She remembered times when she had watched him secretly, seeing the things that he had done. He was powerful, and he would make them hurt.
He is safe with me. You have my word.
Grandpa extended a hand, his face deadly serious.
"I want your bond, Glimmer. He comes back, and he comes back whole."
Glimmer hesitated, but reached out and took his hand, a spark passing between them.
I give you my bond. He will be returned to you, whole and held and be true to me. I was no sooner let myself be injured than I would him. I would gladly lay down my life for him, and I know he would for me as well.
Grandpa smiled, releasing her hand as he chuckled.
"Guess that means, while you're gone, I'll have to buy you a wedding present."
Glimmer's laugh was like the tinkling of china.
Not yet, but when the time comes, I trust you will be there.
Grandpa smiled as he looked out into the forest.
"I wouldn't miss it for anything."
"Look, Mom, I don't need anyone to come stay with him. I just need one of you guys to call and check on him this week." Why had I left this till the last minute? "Mark, this is very irresponsible. We put you in charge of keeping your grandfather out of trouble. You really should have told us about this sooner." "Grandpa doesn't need anyone to keep him out of trouble, Mom. I really just keep him company most of the time. I hate to leave him like this, but something important has come up, and I need to leave town for a couple of days, maybe a week at the most. All I need is for you or Dad to call and check on him sometimes. He can still drive. He can still take care of himself. He just needs someone to talk to." Mom didn't sound pleased, and I knew I should have called her yesterday. The sun was setting and I needed to leave soon, but I couldn't just leave Grandpa all alone here. Grandpa wasn't an invalid, but I wanted to make sure someone was looking out just in case. Mark, I just don't... Mom, he's your dad, and you've barely called him since I moved in. That absolutely is true, and we both know it. None of my siblings have called him either. Aunt Kay or Uncle Frank or either of their kids have called him. I have been here for over a year, doing what needs to be done and loving every minute of it. At this point, this place feels more like home than the home I left behind. I'm not asking for much, just call, talk to him while I'm gone. Please. I saw Glimmer waiting at the edge of the property, smiling like a cat as she waved at me. Mark, if this is how you shirk your responsibility, then we might need to... Grandpa's hand slipped over the cordless phone as he took it from me. Go on, kid. I'll handle her. Go on. Why, Molly, it's been so long. How are you? Is Stephen still... He was still chirping at her as I left, the door closing behind me as I ran to Glimmer. We were in the woods before moonrise. You're still here. Thanks so much for joining us for tonight's spooky tale. If you'd like a little bit more spooky in your life, why not click on one of the videos that appears at the end of our story, or maybe head on over to one of our playlists where you can get your fill of spooky content. If you like your spooky a little more tactile, I've got a new book that's come out. If you'd like your own copy, there's a link below in the description where you can get your own copy of my spooky book. If you like what you see here on the channel and think you might like to support in a more monetized way, then why not come over to Patreon or become a member on YouTube? Speaking of, let's go ahead and thank our members now. Thanks to Civ Garstad, Unicorn Hollow, and Army Dude for being our spooky ghost contributors. Thanks to Janet, Lee Kendall, Saikat, Ronda J, Sue Casper, and Valinator for being our spooky skeleton contributors. And thanks to Oh Snap, Hi Stacy, Winter, Xaronan, Stephanie Carrington, Tyler Parker, Cinnamon Fox, Grim Reaper, TomBoiTopUwU, and Queen Sheebah for being our ghostly reader tier contributors. And a big thanks to Scott Donahue for being our ghostly writer tier contributor. Thanks everyone. We just couldn't do the show without you. If you'd like to support the channel, then come on down to Patreon or become a member on YouTube. Spooky Skeleton tier contributors, that's our $5 tier, get their spooky 12 hours early at 8:30 a.m. as opposed to 8:30 p.m. my time, of course. And while Ghostly Reading is only a tier that's available on Patreon, you get a signed copy of my book anytime I write one on your doorstep in, hopefully, a timely manner. If you'd like a book, we have many on Amazon. I've got links below if you'd like to follow those. Should get you to my page so you can buy any one of my 8 books I believe we're up to now. I'm sure they'd look really nice on your shelf, and I'll sign them for you if you can find me out in the wild. And as always, thanks for stopping by. Dr. Plague, signing off. Have a wonderful evening.